What's up, y'all? Mike here. Welcome back for another devotional. We're going to look at 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 24, and kind of a little bit of context from the whole thing, but I'm going to read it now. It says this: Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and your words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. I feared the people and obeyed their voice. And so we're looking at the life of Saul here in 1 Samuel, and really what I see here in the lesson, I just want to throw it out at the very beginning here. It says Saul feared man more than God. We see this in the context of this story. It's right that Saul and the people that go and defeat the Amalekites, and I hesitate to even mention this because it brings up a lot more questions than answers, right? But God tells them to destroy the Amalekites and all the livestock and everything. And they don't do it. You know, Samuel comes to Saul and he asks him, like, why haven't you obeyed the Lord? And he says, well, we have. He said, what's that sound? I can hear the sheep in the background that you've kept. And then Saul goes on to claim that, well, they did do it, but they just kept some of the best sheep to offer as sacrifices to the Lord. And ultimately, I don't know if Saul was a part of that, or maybe kind of like the verse that I just read kind of insinuates he was just afraid to stop it. Sometimes we see that people fear man more than God. We would rather disobey God than disappoint man. We'd rather disobey God than face a difficult situation. And I think that's what we see here in the life of Saul, whether he was complicit in keeping the animals, or maybe he just was a poor leader and didn't hold his men to the command of the Lord. It doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, they transgressed. They went against the command of the Lord. And I read something really interesting recently, actually, that later in the book of Esther, Haman is a descendant of the Amalekites, right? So had they obeyed the Lord, the Jewish people wouldn't have been on the precipice of annihilation in the book of Esther. And so maybe that's just kind of the distant fruits of disobedience, the consequence of disobedience later on down the road. And obviously the Lord delivered him in that situation, but kind of a little interesting tidbit. But what we see here is in the life of Saul, and this isn't the first time it happened, right? Earlier in his life, he was going to battle. I don't remember exactly who it was against. I want to say the Philistines, but it could have been someone else. And they were waiting for Samuel to come to offer a sacrifice, to give the offering, and Samuel was late, and the people were kind of getting restless because they were the underdogs in this battle. And so Saul finally, he offers up the offering himself, and you got to believe it's kind of good intentions, I guess, right? He wants to offer this thing to the Lord so they can go into battle and win, because the people are getting scared and anxious. I'm sure Saul is getting a little bit anxious. Samuel is nowhere to be found. He could come tomorrow. He might not ever come, right? And I think we even see this kind of same pattern in this story, right? Where Saul kind of fears man more than God. Like, he fears the enemy, but he also fears his own people. Like, how are they going to respond? What are they going to do? Are they going to rebel against me if I don't do something, right? And so he offers an offering, and we know that Samuel, right after he does that, Samuel comes and discovers it and kind of rebukes him, and he gets in trouble for that. But it's really the second one, the one that we're reading from today in chapter 15. That's where Saul loses the Lord. When he refuses to obey his commands, when they take some of the best spoil for themselves, even though they claim it was for the Lord doesn't want our offerings and sacrifices. He wants obedience, right? He desires mercy, not sacrifice. He desires obedience, not this offering. Like, it all belongs to him already. Who do we think we are that we could disobey him, and just by giving it back to him that somehow we're going to appease him? No. Like, I even heard recently someone said, like, they earned some money maybe in an unrighteous way, and it's like, well, if you just get a tithe off of it, give 10% back, and it'll gain some leniency from the Lord. I don't think it works like that. God is not delighted by our offerings and sacrifices. He wants us to obey him, right? He doesn't just want our offerings. And so here in this story, we read it, right? Saul, he was afraid of the people, and so he sinned. He went against the Lord. And as a result of that, the Lord left him. That's when the throne was taken from Saul. And that was also the last time Samuel ever spoke or saw Saul. Samuel left and they never met again. So after that incident, Saul lost the Lord. Saul lost the priest, Samuel. He lost the one that was speaking to him and sharing the word of the Lord to him. He lost the presence of God because he feared man more than God. And I think what we see this is if we don't fear God, we will lose God, right? We will lose his voice within the roaring sea of society, right? We'll push away those that are going to lead us to him and help us to hear his voice like Samuel was for Saul. If we don't fear God, we will lose him. That's what Saul did. Saul feared man and he lost everything. As a result, later on in his life kind of deteriorates. But sometimes we look at Saul almost like he's a villain, like he's the bad guy, but we forget that he was the God-ordained leader for Israel. When they asked for a king, God chose Saul. He didn't rise to that position from ambition. He didn't put himself there. God put him there. And he just went astray. And I think, like I've said over and over again already, I think one of the big reasons they went astray is because he feared man more than God. And it cost him everything. So I just want to encourage us, don't make that same mistake. Listen to the people that God puts around you, right? Hold fast to doing the right thing. He knew what the right thing was. He just didn't do it. Whether or not, again, from his own selfishness and wanting to take some of the spoil or just afraid of stepping in front of the men who were going astray. Let us obey the call. Let us hold fast to the call of God and the purpose he has put on our life. Fear God, not man. And when we fear God, there's nothing to be afraid of. When we fear God and know that God is for us, we don't have to be afraid of what man will do to us. Whether it be at your job or at your school, your workplace, your home, your neighbors. We don't have to be afraid of how man will respond. Fear God, not man. I think that is what I see from the life of Saul. And especially until chapter 15 here and some of the preceding stories is that he repeatedly gives in to the fear of man. And I think that's really what derails a lot of leaders and a lot of people that desire to do the right thing. We desire to honor the Lord. We desire to do the right thing, but we're afraid. We're insecure. And so when the pressure moment comes, like Saul in this story, we do nothing. We remain silent. And so let us learn from his story, and so that we can become greater and to be used for even greater things. Not that we're becoming greater. The Lord, let him become greater, let us become less. But in doing so, he will elevate us. He will use you for great things. Well, God bless you. Let's get after it this week.